Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Home and Away, a podcast devoted to all things in and around the world of sport in Kansas City soccer. I am Drew Vanderblue, joined once again, as always, by my good friend Cody Welton. This week on the podcast, the MLS Offseason has well and truly begun, as MLS Cup was concluded last weekend, crowning Inter Miami as champions, as a collective sigh of relief was released in both Miami's ownership suite and probably MLS headquarters. That has led us directly into what is a fairly furious 4-week period prior to teams reporting for preseason camp in early January, which includes the start of free agency, which is literally today as we're recording this, the waiver process, which everyone loves, for all of out-of-contract players ineligible for free agency, as well as the college showcase and MLS Super Draft, which happens literally 8 days from now. So we've gone from a bit of a lull in off-season activity to what we expect to be a flurry of activity over the next several weeks as teams prepare for their 2026 seasons. Sporting Kansas City is obviously amongst the teams with the most work to do, needing not only to fill as many as 15 slots on their active roster, but also their head coach and staff. We have some news on both fronts, as there has been reporting on the final group of candidates that Sporting is looking at for the head coach position, as well as a player acquisition, albeit perhaps not in the most urgent position on the field based on the current roster makeup. There is a lot to keep up with, so we will try to do our best to provide some context for you all on the various bits of information we've seen over the past week, as well as to continue to give our thoughts on what we think and expect the team is working on. So, Cody, first, we should probably cover the last game of the 2025 MLS season, and it was a pretty entertaining one, as MLS Cup, in my opinion, pretty much lived up to the hype from a competitiveness standpoint. Vancouver was extremely positive and bright in this one, and I think very easily could have won this match. But as we often like to say on the pod, sometimes ball don't go in, or in this case, hit both posts and ricochet out.
Yeah, that was rough.
So what did you take away from that match in what appears to be the last MLS match to be played in Fort Lauderdale?
I mean, I felt like I agree with you that it was an entertaining game, and I don't mind that Messi and company got the win. I was personally probably rooting for Vancouver along with a lot of people, but I did think that I've heard some concern in some camps of Jesper Sorensen's his tactical plan, and I think, from my perspective, one thing I haven't heard mentioned a lot is, I thought that it seemed that Vancouver was really trying to really spread out and possess the ball in the first half, and make Miami run. Because Miami is an older team, and all of those things, and so I thought that was the reason maybe for the tepid start of Vancouver, and what maybe might have appeared to be a more cautious or conservative game plan. I think from my perspective, at least during the game, I didn't go back and rewatch it or anything, but at least my perspective was that they were trying to spread out and make Miami chase the ball, and then really try and up the physicality and pace in the second half, which they did. And I thought that they were, they had their best moments came in the second half when they had to chase the game a little bit. But I think a lot of folks have made mention of the fact that championships are about moments, and Miami dominated the moments, and that's always been the magic of Messi, and
that's why you signed Lionel Messi.
That's why you sign any high level designated player. Like, that's why, right? That's why you sign Youngmin Son is so that he hits a free kick like he did, in against Vancouver,
which they were somehow able to overcome.
Right.
But still, that's why LAFC signed Heung-min Son, was to be able to do that. 90+6 in the last 20 seconds of the game, free kick goal, we're going to extra time.
And just to bring that circle back around, like like Sporting Kansas City has 2 designated players, but neither one of them I think are that guy, right? At least not that we've seen to this point. And so I think it just really kind of underlines the gap in quality, and that's a gap that can be made up, by some squad building, but it's a gap nonetheless, and it it just made for the high level of soccer, and that the high soccer IQ of especially the Miami veterans. I think it really made for a compelling final, and I really enjoyed it. Even after watching the Premier League all morning long, I thought it slotted in quite nicely, and I like I said, I enjoyed it immensely, and I think that it brings up a lot of interesting questions for what's going to happen over the next season, and over the off season and next year. So.
Yeah, I mean, we won't discuss what happened in the Liverpool game just prior to it starting. We don't need to talk about
Liverpool
that.
played? I didn't even know.
I didn't even know that. You weren't even aware of it, right?
No.
Weren't even aware that there was a game that happened right before that.
Oh, my gosh.
They did beat Inter Milan yesterday, so you've got that going for you. Anyway, and it might stumble into Xabi Alonso, so
seems headed that direction, doesn't it?
So maybe things aren't so bad. When it comes to this match, I think my quibbles with Jesper Sorensen's coaching were less about his tactics and more about his in-game decisions. I really think that when he decided, when he was making, right around the hour mark, like the 63rd minute, I think, he made substitutes and he brought on Ryan Gauld. Typically, he took off Ali Ahmed, and I don't know that was necessarily the right choice.
No, I think in retrospect it probably wasn't, but I mean,
but he also got sort of Mullered, right? Like Muller did not look great in this game.
No,
in my opinion, he looked half injured for a lot of this match, and so there was an injury timeout when he's making the substitution, and Muller sort of told the Vancouver, because this is when Ralph Priso comes off for Poupe, and they Priso is down with an injury, and I think they thought that Muller needed to come off, and he has typically swapped Gauld for Muller. It's rare that they've played together. They have played together, but not often. And it just really unbalanced their left side, in my opinion, because Gauld moves out to play left wing, and it was just kind of like a weird situation. And it didn't really work out, in my opinion. And it created a lot of space on that side. And the problem with playing against a team like Inter Miami with the high soccer IQ players, like you discussed, if they see a weakness, they're immediately going to attack it. Especially Lionel Messi, if he sees a pocket of space that he can take advantage of, he's going to do it. And I mean, I don't know. I mean, shit happens sometimes. Like you said, these games are about moments. Miami has the players that are familiar with maximizing those moments when they can. And I mean, I texted you at the same time I blue skied how good of a game Andres Cubas was having. He was having a fucking absurd game until this point, wasn't he? Like he was doing all the things I love to watch Andres Cubas do. Right? Yeah. He was borderline man of the match until this moment.
Yeah.
And then Messi just abuses him, takes the ball off him, and it's a goal, and you're just like, oh, fuck, here we go.
Yep. Yeah, that was disappointing. I mean, and the really disappointing thing about it was just so unnecessary. Like he is generally a very tidy passer. He's not like an amazing passer, but he's a very ball secure player, and he just kind of just took too many touches and dawdled on the ball, and boom, and it was on. Like it was really, really.
And then Sorensen took him off the field because they were chasing a goal.
Yeah,
and it just took all the balance out of their lineup whatsoever. So like I think if I'm if I'm trying to be critical of how Sorensen managed this game, it's more about how he managed the in-game environment to me than it was like what his tactical plan was. I thought his tactical plan actually worked pretty well. Like I don't think it was poor. I think that he allowed Thomas Muller to sort of convince him to to leave him on the field when I think his initial idea was right, to bring Galden in the middle.
Yeah.
I think they would have been much more balanced, and perhaps maybe they give up that goal anyway. I don't know. But then they also had no ability to win the ball back centrally once Kubas is off the field. So Miami basically dominated the last 20 minutes of this game because they just didn't have the personnel to sort of offset what they were doing. So it sucks. I mean, but that's also how these games go, right? Like it's a cup final. And you're trying to figure out the best way to win, and you're kind of throwing some shit at the wall when you're down a goal, and maybe you make the wrong decision. And so it's easy to Monday morning quarterback it.
As a result of all this, like I'm sitting here thinking, and I don't know if I've mentioned it on the pod, but for a while I've been kind of wondering about Rodrigo De Paul, and like I mean, obviously he's good, right? But is he good?
He's very good at yelling at referees.
like I don't know, like whenever I watch him, he's like there, but he doesn't really. Nothing he does has ever really stood out to me. And so I started looking at his his FBref stats, and what do you know? It said where on the pull down where it says players that he's comparable to, our friend Manu Garcia was in there, and so I sent you the comparison of their radar graphs, and it's like it's kind of interesting, right? Like DePaul is supposed to be quote unquote Messi's bodyguard, and is like someone.
Is he though?
No, but see that's the thing. Like, and that's what
he's his bodyguard with the referee,
right?
I mean,
right. But it's not like Rodrigo DePaul is not like some like tackling machine, like quasi destroyer in the midfield.
He was never that Atletico Madrid either.
His numbers.
They had Koke. They had damn it, my brain is going off. But they had Saul and Koke. They did not need Rodrigo De Paul to do that shit.
Yeah. And so like I was just surprised at how comparable his numbers are to Manu Garcia's numbers, and I don't know what to take away from that necessarily, other than it was just something that I found kind of fascinating, and and I don't know, maybe just a data point when we think about how Sporting Kansas City moves ahead and builds their squad around a player like Garcia.
So I shared that when you texted it to me. I thought it was interesting as well because you had like sort of the FB chart, data viz, plot graph of their.
I could do that. I could do that all day long. Just think of players and compare them. It's fun.
I did it with Jansen Miller and a center back. We're probably going to talk about in a minute. I think that it's always fun to just get the data viz and sort of see kind of where they're similar, where they're not. I mean, DePaul is slightly better at tackling, but other than that, they're fairly similar players. And I did share it with Joe Lowry because I thought it was very intriguing. So I sent it over to him, and he's like, "Ooh, this is interesting. It's very interesting." And he sort of alluded to the same concepts that you and I have talked about, which is Manu Garcia is the platonic ideal of the Peter Vermees midfielder.
Yeah.
At least the left side, it's sort of 8-10, right, of his setup.
His elite skill in MLS last year was switching the ball, which is something that Peter Vermees loves, we know, and so.
I mean, he had a lot of elite skills, but that are related to central midfielders moving the ball forward, right? But yeah, switching the ball is a big one of them. But what Joe said to me, and it's something again that we've discussed a lot. If he is going to be a primary part of your midfield, your wingers are really important. Yeah. They're really important. Yep. They have to be aggressive, sort of chance-creating wingers for that to work. And Shapi Suleimanov is not that. And so you basically, as we discussed last week, you've cut an arm off, or in this case, because you both the fullback and the right back on that right winger on that side were just not effective in chance creation. You've cut like half your body off, and we just saw what happened. I think Manu Garcia can thrive. We've been trying to speak Cristian Espinoza into existence. You want to talk about a player that would be an absurd fit for this team? Absolutely absurdly good fit for this team is Cristian Espinoza. I don't think it's the right time for them to be investing in a DP right winger, even though he deserves to be a DP. Yep. He deserves all of the interest that he's getting. I don't understand how San Jose has fumbled the bag in this way. Like, San Jose, like, what are you doing? Honestly. But he would be like just plug and play, an immediately good fit. And can you imagine a front four of Shalhoub, Joveljic, Espinoza, and Garcia? That would be fun. That would be extremely fun.
Yeah, it would be
I don't know
blast.
who's playing any of the other positions.
That's okay. I mean, if it would be a complete 180 from last season, that's for sure, where, you know, it was just like, you know, all grim and dire, and this would just be like, you know, let's score more goals than the other team every time.
Yeah, and that's sort of what San Jose tried to do last year, right? Yeah. Realistically, it's not happening. We know this based on what we understand from what David Lee's trying to do. He doesn't want to sign a third DP right now, and I don't think it's necessarily the most I don't think it's the most responsible way to build this roster to sign Cristian Espinoza
if you're Cristian Espinoza, you don't want to come. There are going to be a lot more,
especially for 10% discount off what San Jose has already offered you.
There are going to be a lot more competitive suitors than Sporting Kansas City, so it's just not going to happen.
Yeah, as far as competitive on the field, right? So, and I say 10% discount because MLS is what they are. San Jose did offer them a contract. There are rules in the CBA about how much another team can offer them because they don't want teams competing with each other, because the contract's with MLS, right? When it all comes down to it, the contract's with MLS. It's kind of like how Brenner is technically a free agent, even though his loan ends at the end of the year, right? Like the contract's with MLS, so they don't want MLS franchises getting into bidding wars with each other when the player is going to be in MLS regardless. So we're in a situation where no team can offer what San Jose has already offered him.
Yep.
And the NBA has rules like this too in their CBA, right? We've seen this before where the team that player could re-sign with can offer a much more lucrative contract than a free agency team can offer. And sometimes they still make those choices. But generally, in those circumstances, we're talking about players who are making $45 million a year instead of $52 million a year.
Right.
Not guys who are making $2.5 million a year instead of $2.8 million a year. Right. Like it's a different calculus at that point. So anyway, we've been trying to speak Cristian Espinoza into existence, but realistically, we understand that's not likely. But he would be a very good fit for what they need. Yeah. We've gotten a little bit off track when it comes to that, but I do think that it does highlight, going back to Miami, what does Rodrigo de Paul do for them? Obviously, he scores the final goal in this game, or he scores the goal. He scores the game-winning goal, right? He scores the game-winning goal, not the final goal. But Allende gets the last goal, right? And he gets the was it Allende gets the last goal?
Yes.
Yeah, he gets 90+6 and ends up getting the record, right, for most games in the playoffs. But what do you see this team looking like next year? Because obviously no Busquets, no Alba. They're going to sign another DP, maybe Timo Werner, it sounds like.
I had not heard that. That's hilarious.
Oh, that's been a thing out there for sure.
I hope it happens, just because it would be just hilarious that Red Bulls would not seal the deal on Werner, and Werner would go to someplace else like that. But
I think Red Bulls don't want him. Like, they don't want him for what he wants. So the problem is Werner makes so much goddamn money. Yeah. And Werner's not going to take a massive pay cut to go play for New York Red Bulls. Miami will pay him the money he wants. Like, he makes over 11 million euros right now for Leipzig. So
are all of Messi's favorite players attackers? Because I mean, I would, like, if I were Messi, I'd be like, oh, let's bring in a defender. But apparently he doesn't know any of them. He's not friends with any defenders. So
supposedly, I was gonna make a joke about Sergio Reguilon at one point, but because he a defender?
Yeah.
I don't know. Unsure. I think I don't know. I'm interested to see what this next phase looks like, right? Because obviously Messi is bought into staying there for a couple more years and really trying to make this team something. I think DePaul is not necessarily a bad choice, but to the same conversation that we've had on this podcast, when I've had it with Joe and we've had it since, about is a elite sort of ball progressing central midfielder a good use of a DP slot?
Yeah.
And I guess it is, if you can get Tadeo Allende back.
Well, and
right?
if that's what it takes to keep Messi happy, then yeah, it's a great use.
I mean, at some point, that's the thing. It's like when you have the best player on earth, then you just do what he wants you to do.
Right. Well, and you know that in terms of chance creation, whether it's in the final third or in transition to the final third, you know that Messi is going to be there and he's got the goods, and so you don't have to worry so much about chance creation as much as you need to worry about having someone who covers a lot of ground and who, one thing about DePaul is like, I still don't know exactly what he does, but he does a little bit of everything. I know that, and he covers a lot of ground. And he's always,
you can look at his plot chart against Manu Garcia's, and you can see it's similar shit.
He always seems to be in the right place at the right time, and I think he's got a really good soccer mind, and that means something. He's also a winner, right? Like he's a World Cup winner.
I'm interested to see what he looks like without Sergio Busquets in the midfield.
Yeah,
I think
absolutely.
that is going to make a huge difference in what he is responsible for.
Yep.
Because say what you want about Sergio Busquets' mobility, and people have been saying it for a decade. Mm-hmm. The man always knows where the ball's going to be. Always knows. So you never have to worry about hitting the pass out of midfield because he's the guy doing it. So I think his responsibilities are going to increase when he's playing next to Yannick Bright.
yeah, a little bit.
So that's going to be an interesting one, really, to see kind of how that evolves in the future. I don't think Miami's going to be a bad way. Like I said, they still have the best player on earth. Yeah. It's not going to be like they're going to be bad all of a sudden. But it is going to be a different version of them, for sure. I just cannot wait to watch Timo Werner just absolutely fumble a shot on goal and see how Messi responds to it.
Yeah, I mean, it might just be the perfect thing for Werner because he might just wind up with tap-ins, and that might be the thing that really gets him going.
I mean, there's one thing that guy can do is run behind a defense. Yeah. He's exceptionally good at it, and if he just keeps making those runs over and over, Messi will find him.
Yeah.
So you're right. That may be something that works out for them well. Anyway, that's enough talking about Miami. As we discussed, the offseason is now begun, right? MLS Cup is over. And holy crap, is there a lot of weird MLS-ness that's going to happen over the next week?
The European mind cannot possibly comprehend all of the shenanigans that, I mean, it's ridiculous.
Of the MLS waiver process, we're not even allowed to call it the draft anymore. Yeah. I don't know why they don't call it the waiver draft. It's the waiver process.
Well, because you can't step on the toes of the super draft because that's,
I don't even. It's the re-entry process. Excuse me. The re-entry process is how it's discussed now.
If you have to call something a process, it's not very sexy. That's just.
I'm not even really gonna get way into the weeds about this because it's not that important, and it's really only there are so few players that actually get selected via this process anymore that it's sort of irrelevant. We don't need to get into the minutia of what a bona fide offer is and whether or not they can accept this money or that money. Don't worry about it. It'll all work itself out over the next week or so, and then we will know what players have been selected. The key thing with the quote-unquote re-entry process is these are players who are out of contract with MLS but are not eligible for free agency, which means this year the age limit and the years are down. So it's 4 years, service years, quote unquote service years. So they've played in 4 seasons in MLS and they're 24 or older. that is what makes you eligible for free agency. So if you're under those numbers, a good example of this last year, when it was 5 years and 25 or 26, Remy Voltaire was not eligible for free agency because of those limits. They're reduced for this season as part of this CBA that goes through the end of 2028. And yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of players in there. And, you know, if they get selected, they get selected. There's all kinds of limitations when it comes to this. It's not like free agency where you can sign a guy for whatever. And even free agency isn't you can sign a guy for whatever. Like, for example, there's a lot of discussion around Paul Rothrock, right? Rothrock was for whatever reason, I don't know why, Seattle wouldn't get him re-signed beforehand. I guess he really wanted to test the market. Rothrock, because he was a supplemental roster guy, he can only be offered the league maximum, which is the DP charge, right? So it's 12.5% of the cap, which I think is just over $800,000 next year. So yep. Rothrock cannot be offered by any team more than $800,000. Similarly to the conversation we talked about with Christian Espinoza, because San Jose had already offered him a new deal, no team is allowed to offer him more than 90% of that deal. So there are all these kinds of limitations and rules that come into it. I really don't need all of y'all to be that concerned about it. Other than to be aware of what the quote-unquote bidding wars will be for certain players and whether or not it makes sense for Sporting Kansas City to potentially sign them, right? So, like, for example, there are tons of players available in free agency, like high-quality players available in free agency right now. Dane Sinclair, Christian Espinoza, Carlos Coronel, Paul Rothrock, Christian Benteke, Robin Lod, Walker Zimmerman, Sean Johnson, I don't know, Josef Martinez, I don't know. There are a number of those types of players that are available. None of them make any sense for Sporting to try and sign, right? Walker Zimmerman wants a DP deal. Robin Lod makes no sense for what they need on their roster. Christian Benteke makes no sense for what they need on their roster for a 35-year-old guy. He's an elite goal scorer for sure, but it makes no sense for their roster build. Any goalkeeper that's going to make a ton of money makes no sense for what they're doing with their roster right now, especially with the signing they made this week. So we look at a lot of these, and Joe actually asked me this. She's like, do you think they're going to make any splashes in free agency? I'm like, well, define splash, because I don't know that any of these players. Justin Haak is the only one that makes any sense out of all of them, and he's well known to have issues. He came out when David Lee left New York City and talked shit about him. Yeah. So probably not Justin Haak. And yeah, I mean, the veterans, we got to be going down the list a little bit. Yeah. As far as I think we're talking about guys who are much closer to the margins or sort of the mid-level or, you know, kind of in that 500K or so range. I don't think those are splashes. Hassani Dotson is obviously one that has been talked about on the Discord a lot. Assuming he's healthy, he should be fully recovered from his meniscus issue. He just he was obviously just not rated by Eric Ramsey for whatever reason. I don't think he's the right player for their system, to be completely honest. So I think that has something to do with why he just wasn't really prioritized. They just traded for Peter Stroud from New York Red Bulls, who is he fits much more into the ethos of what Minnesota is trying to do than Hassani Dotson does. Hassani Dotson's in his prime central midfielder who moves the ball forward a lot, is dangerous in the final third, a lot more of like a Weston McKennie type player. I don't want to compare him. Like, I want to be clear. When I say that, I'm not saying he's of the level of Weston McKennie. I'm saying he's that style of player that I think would be valuable to this team for sure. Brandon Bai, a long time, you're talking about a right back with a ton of minutes in this league. Kyle Duncan, we discussed last week. Like, there are some of these that make sense, right? But none of them are really like, oh my God, what a game-changing player.
None of them are going to move the needle. And I mean, that's just this team is going to have to sign some of those players who don't move the needle. They're going to have to sign a lot of them. And so, like, I would just suggest that fans be very, sort of tempered in their approach and maybe cautious optimism is warranted. But I would not look for a lot of big names. And I personally, I don't want to see a lot of big names necessarily, right? Unless they're at very key spots on the field, and like obviously right wing is one of them. Like, that's a place where a name might be a nice to see, but none of these players are that, and we've already discussed the fact that that's a expecting a DP level player this off season for that spot is probably not going to happen. And so it's really about building a good and balanced team with a lot of depth, and so like it's wide open at this point. And so any of these players who aren't really moving the needle when you go down the list, but you could see them, slotting in, and that is a player like Dotson or like Bai, or, even Gaston Brugman, who is a free agent who would be a good sort of backup option. And that's really what we're looking at, right? Is depth pieces at this point in the game.
Especially on a possession-based team, if that is what they're doing. And we'll get to the coaching carousel conversation here in a second, but it seems like the guys they're looking at are 4-3-3 as ball-dominant teams, right? Like, that is not necessarily exactly the same as Vermees, and I've done a little scouting on one of them to kind of see what they're looking at. Brugman is ideal for that as a single pivot, delivering the ball from deep. Like, and so I do think that is an interesting one, right? But none of these are earth-shattering type of signings. And I think, while it seems like there's a really deep list of high-quality free agents in the league, it doesn't become as deep when you realize there's 30 teams competing for them.
Yeah. Yeah.
All of a sudden, you're like, well, there's really like 8 that really move the needle.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing, too, is, like, do we want... It might be unavoidable, but do we get really excited about someone who's over 30, who has that name recognition? Like if João Paulo signs for the team, is that something that moves the needle? Probably not. I mean, like, these are players, again, these are like depth options, right? These are players who might be brought in to spot start and might be serving as a bridge until more a more robust scouting can take place.
Yeah, I think that these are areas for the team to potentially look to augment. I think you're probably going to see some trades, right, for some other domestic-based or MLS-based players that don't require international slots.
By trade, you mean like Cashford type stuff?
Yeah, I mean trade or GAM trades or whatever, right? I don't think that. I would be surprised to see Sporting trade a player at this point.
They don't have anybody wants.
Right. Well, I mean, and even if the ones that teams might want, they don't want to let go of because that would put them in a worse hole.
Yep.
Right. So I think that there are these are going to be ways where the team sort of augments the build, and I think from a fan's perspective, I just want everyone to be realistic about this. The moves that we're going to hear about first are going to be the least inspiring ones.
Yeah.
Because the European transfer window doesn't open until January. So any of the moves they're going to make now are not likely to be ones that sort of get you excited about this guy coming from this team with this type of history.
Right.
They are going to be, Liga MX. Did we get Santi Munoz back for cheap, right? Which appears to be still ongoing negotiations. Stephen Cleveland, who we're going to talk about in a second, or we can talk about now, right? The one signing they have made, which is a 4th goalkeeper, which probably has a lot of people going, I mean, cool, but, we got a lot of work to do. Why are we talking about a 4th goalkeeper? And I understand it, but that's in the current market, especially without a head coach in place. this is what you're going to see is sort of the building blocks to sort of create stability and raise the floor of this team, which is pretty fucking low last year.
Yeah.
And I think that is what you're going to see out of the majority of these types of signings is trying to figure out how to raise the floor, build a level of competency that even if everybody's sort of having a bad day, we're not going to look as bad as we did last year.
Yeah.
And I think that's really the focus of a lot of these free agencies and trades and whatnot that are going to happen to sort of fill out certain areas of the roster that aren't as sexy, but the sexy signings happen later.
Right.
It's just the way that it goes.
Well, and I think it's worth pointing out that, like, you know, training camp starts in like a month, right? So there's like 4 to 6 weeks. The next 4 to 6 weeks, there's going to be signings. Like there has to be. So
they do, but a lot of them may not be that noteworthy, right?
Right.
Mano Garcia signed well after training camp had started, right? Felipe Gutierrez, all these guys, a lot of them signed in fucking February.
Yeah.
So like, I understand where like the level of urgency that the fans have to seeing this fixed immediately is, and the team should be operating with a certain level of urgency. They have 15 guys on the senior roster. Like, yeah, they need to sign some players. I promise you that they understand that. But I also think that it's unrealistic to expect this team to look like a fully formed unit in January when they report to camp. I just don't believe it will be the case.
Yeah. And
so I'm sort of preparing myself for that now. Whatever that means to the rest of you listening, I'm just saying that like it doesn't. It's unrealistic to expect them to have this fully vetted out in January 10th or whenever they report to camp.
Yep, totally agree.
Are there any other players that you noticed on these lists? I mean, I'm looking at the waiver list and there is literally no one. Duenas, maybe? I don't know. There's nobody on the waiver list that even the least bit looks exciting to me, which leaves me with even less interest into explaining what the reentry process is, because there's like less than 20 players on it, and none of them are interesting. Anybody on the free agency list that popped out to you, or Tommy Scoops has been reporting today on certain players that might be available for trade? I mean, obviously Emeka and Nelly would be great, but I just don't see that happening.
João Paulo was the only one that jumped out at me just because I love that dude, and
but he is not himself anymore.
No,
like
and
after his injury.
That's the thing, right? And that's the case with a lot of these players. Once who are older or more injury prone. Honestly, you can say the same thing about Hassani Dotson, right? Like. Who knows how he is, how he's going to be, post injury, and whether he's going to be able to recapture that.
And that's the second injury he's had on that knee.
That's it. And so like all all of these players that we're discussing, like they all have negative bullet points under their heading, because if they didn't, they wouldn't be in this position. And so it's just a matter of the thing that Lee has that you and I don't have is he has the benefit of the full picture, right? And the knowing what he needs in order to have a balanced squad. And so that just puts a lot of more trust back onto him to get it done right. And I'm much more interested and concerned in a coaching hire than I am in any of these MLS free agents or waiver prospects, frankly.
And neither of us has really scouted the college game enough to have any reasonable thoughts on what that's going to look like. I mean, other than the fact that for some reason Dallas needed to pay $350K a game to get one spot ahead of us in the draft. Cool. Guess we'll see who they pick up. Anyway, let's talk about the coaching carousel, because that has obviously been a topic that Tom Bogert actually reported on. And again, it's nice that we're actually seeing news from Tommy Scoops about what's happening with this club. So Tom reported that we're at the finalist stage of the head coaching search. There are 3 finalists. Right before that report came out, we did see some communication from the club about Kerry Savagnin leaving. Obviously, Kerry had not made the final three. I don't think either one of us is super surprised about that. My understanding is that he was offered a position in the club and declined. So, I mean, good for Kerry to branch out a little bit and see what he wants to do next. And maybe it's something with Peter, or maybe it's not. Maybe he finds a USL championship job that he can go put his own imprint on. I do think he's an exceptionally smart soccer guy.
Yeah.
And I love talking to him about the game because he's a really interactive person that loves discussing the game. So I think there's a place for him somewhere. I really do. We'll just have to see. I think that there's just too much baggage here.
Yeah, I would like for him to go get some experience and cut his teeth with a team other than the one that I support, right? I want him to be successful, but I don't want to watch him go through his growing pains coaching the club I support, especially for another season. And so I think maybe going to USL and being a head coach there might be better if that's the direction that he wants to go. Maybe he's decided that he just would prefer to be an assistant coach or be in charge of academy or whatever. We don't know, but I think that's probably the right move for him.
Yeah. So what we did learn from that report is there were 3 finalists, and the one that Tom was able to report on was Rafael Vicky, which was an interesting candidate for Vicky. Most people remember from his somewhat problematic time in the Chicago Fire. He was the head coach of the Fire after being the head coach of the US U17s, U19s.
I think so, yeah.
Maybe both of those youth teams he was in charge of, and was prior to that a youth coach and an assistant coach at FC Basel, which is where Georg Heitz came from. Heitz was the sporting director in Chicago for 6 years, so that has a lot to do with sort of the connections as to why he was at the Fire. Was let go from that position after 2 pretty poor years as a head coach there. Did not have a job for a year, and then somehow picked up the job at Young Boys, which is the best team in the Swiss league. Won the title the first year, was about to lose the title the second year, and got fired. So and has not had a job since then. This was March of 2024, and he is still without a job. It sounds like potentially he has interviewed with Lee before, so it's one that he's a guy that Lee is familiar with. I don't know how I feel about this guy. I do know how I feel. I don't want him to be the head coach of this team.
So my heart sunk when I heard that name. I was like, oh shit, that's not a good sign. But I think that when you said when you made the comment on the Discord that we've heard 2 names, so that means it's probably the third name that we haven't heard yet is the guy who's going to be that makes sense, and that I was much more optimistic when I read that comment because that it rang true to me. So
yeah, I mean it's very similar to how the whole David Lee conversation went.
Yeah,
we knew about 3 names. We didn't know about his name until right before he got hired.
Yeah.
Similarly here, we've heard about Rafael Vicky. We've also heard about Frere Alex Anderson, who is did I say that right? I don't know.
Sure.
That's
how I would have said it. It looks fine.
Okay, he's the current head coach of Brann in the Norwegian league. He's a Icelandic coach that was previously the coach of this is a Belgian team that I'm going to struggle with. Kjorvik, I think is how it's pronounced, but I could be completely off on this. I cannot wait for Sam Piron to tell me how badly I've hammered these names in the Discord later. But regardless, he has taken Brann up to the top 4 of the Norwegian league. They're in Europa League right now. I think they play a game tomorrow. I did scout this team a little bit because I was kind of interested to see his style. Vicky, we know, plays a 4-3-3, plays a possession-based 4-3-3. That's kind of always been his sort of move. Brann plays an aggressive possession-based 4-3-3, like borderline Ange Postecoglou kind of shit, like extremely high line, very sort of aggressive and very incisive passing movements. Like this was a team that was fun to watch. Like I watched the highlights from like 3 of their games. Even the game where they got trucked 4-0 to Molde, I watched that one, and the scoreline does not tell how that game went. It was just a ball go in, ball don't go in kind of game. I think Molde had like 0.7 XG in this game. It was just a thing where they just happened to score, and their goalkeeper had just an absolute nightmare in this one. So, who has, by underlying numbers, been very good otherwise. But just watching them, man, they know how they want to move the ball. They are very, very incisive with how they want to move the ball. They run a fairly high defensive line, but they also super aggressively counterpress and like really try to win the ball back as a means to, or, delay transition. Either win the ball back or delay transition. So it is stuff that we're somewhat familiar with. But I just really love their passing patterns. Much more direct with their passing. A lot less short passing and a lot more plus 10-yard passing. Not like 20-yard line splitters, but more like very fast 10-yard passes that were kind of back, and all of a sudden you're in the opponent's zone.
Yeah.
And so they were a very fun team to watch. And so I got sort of excited about it. And then of course he had tamped down all these rumors at that point. Yeah. And I think it goes back to the conversation you were bringing up earlier. Chad Reynolds brought this up on the Discord, and we talked about this as well. We've heard 2 names. There are 3 finalists. It's probably the 3rd one. Right. And that's just how information goes. And Chad also brought up on the Discord the fact that very much like the Lee hire, we heard reports of finalists, we heard a report of one name, a rumor of another name, and then complete silence for several days.
Yeah. They're
probably finalizing contract with whoever they've chosen, who is not those 2 guys. And so I'm sort of intrigued. I'm glad it's not Vicky. I remember thinking about Corey Ray that I was sort of into him, but he'd never done it before, so it's sort of like a little bit of an unknown. I'm glad St. Louis is actually fucking around with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they can have that experiment. Sure.
That test case. Whereas we hired a guy who's been doing this in the league for 6 years.
At a very high level.
At a very high level. So I think that I trust David Lee's decision-making capability, and I did it even when Vicky's name came out. I was like, well, if he really thinks this is the guy, then I'm going to trust him. But, I mean, I looked at some of his stuff, and I'm like, I don't think this is the guy, and it seems like maybe he's not, right? Yeah. So I'm very intrigued to see who that guy may be. And I feel fairly confident that it's not Caleb Porter. So as long as that's the case, I think we'll be all right.
What? I couldn't handle that. I don't know.
I don't get the feeling that David Lee is the type of coach that would hire him, or type of CSO that would hire him as coach. I don't believe that.
Yeah, I would be in a bad way. Our podcast would not be enjoyable for anybody to listen to.
It would not. And anyway, I say that the only reason I brought him was the first one.
Yeah, that came why did you do
head.
That?
That would be the most ridiculous choice ever that he just will not make. I don't believe that he would do that, and that's why I put it out there, because I feel confident that he is going to make a choice that makes sense, and that we're going to be excited about or nerds like me are going to dig into his history and all, and kind of how his teams have played, and sort of get a feel for what we might be looking at. And I think that it feels to me like that has to be coming soon, just based on where we are in the news cycle.
Could be end of the week.
I mean, we're recording the podcast, which means it'll probably happen tomorrow.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Then we'll have to do an emergency pod to discuss
Discord
it.
popping. Discord popping.
Yeah, this is your weekly reminder. I've discussed the Discord several times. Yep. Link is in the show notes. This is where a lot of this conversation happens. So if you want to interact with listeners of the pod, as well as myself, sometimes Cody, about what's going on with the team, that's the place to do it.
I am the lurker in chief. That's my...
You are. You're pretty good at dropping emojis on people's comments.
I mean, it's a small thing, but it's mine. So
Okay, so as we noted, Sporting Kansas City did sign a player, Stephen Cleveland.
yeah, let's go.
That is the fourth goalkeeper. David Lee was very clear that they were going to sign another goalkeeper. He likes to have 4 on the roster.
We know he's a man of his word at this point.
He does follow through on his commitments, so we can appreciate that. I think that Cleveland is exactly the type of goalkeeper that should have been on this roster last year.
Sure. In many ways, he seems to be a very dissimilar keeper to Pulscamp, and so those two contrasting styles, I think, are going to make for an interesting starter battle. Hopefully.
How do you say they're dissimilar? What did you notice about them that made him a dissimilar player to Pulscamp?
I mean, he seems to be much more of a from the numbers that I saw, which are older numbers, because the numbers, the only large.
He's played 2 games in the last 2 years,
right?
Right.
The only large sample of numbers is for what. And
let's be clear, it's because he was behind Brad Stuver,
sure,
right?
Yep.
Who I think is the best goalkeeper in MLS personally. Mm-hmm. I understand why Dane Sinclair got all the shine. I think Brad Stuver is probably the best goalkeeper in the league, but keep going. It's hard to supplant a player like that in Austin. He's like Tim Melia in Austin. Yeah. He is that guy. So anyway, keep going.
So there's not a large sample size of data to gather on him, but that you can see, he's just much more of a shot stopping and a goal saver, much less of a sort of physical presence and long ball specialist, if that's what you want to call John Pulscamp. And so, I think it's really difficult to compare them at this point, given the small sample size and the fact that it's been a couple of years for a Christian, and the fact that Pulscamp was behind a just historically bad defense all right. This last season. It's just really hard to draw comparisons. But I do just my my sense is that they are there's not a lot of overlap in their skill sets, and so.
What was interesting to me when he played for Seattle, when he was there, when Fry got injured, was that he looked like a much younger version of Fry. He was a very similar goalkeeper to Fry, but a much more mobile, active, sort of younger version of Fry.
Yeah. So
he read the game really well. He sort of understood where to be. He was really good at claiming balls in the air, which Pulscamp is not. For all of Pulscamp's physical traits, he's Guillermo Vicario levels of bad when it comes to a ball in the air. He just does not know what the fuck to do with it.
Flappy.
And it gets bodied off the ball a lot. There's just a lot of stuff about set pieces and crosses when it comes to Pulscamp's game I'm not super excited about. Cleveland does not have these problems. So that was that was one thing that I think is pretty good about him. But yeah, I don't know if he's going to play that much or not. To your point,
we don't know.
Pulscamp may level up after a full year of playing in goal, and a new goalkeeper coach as well. He's going to get a new goalkeeper coach. There's a variety of things that can change this calculus quite a bit. The key issue was, if Pulscamp has a run of 5 or 6 bad games, who comes in?
Yeah.
And it was Ryan Shaway or 17-year-old Jack Pulscamp.
Right.
Those were the options. And I think what David Lee has done has brought in a useful player that you can feel somewhat confident in. We were making jokes before the podcast. It's I feel much better about Stephen Cleveland than David Bingham, right? Or, whatever rando career backup MLS player that you can come up with, right? And I think that is the thing. It's this was a smart signing.
Yeah.
I expect to see more of them from our new president of soccer operations over the next several weeks, and hopefully that is what we will see. The last big news of the week, World Cup draw happened.
Yeah.
I did not watch any of it. thankfully, because I heard I heard the cringe could not possibly be measured. Like there was no limit to the cringe. I'm not even going to get into the cringe parts of it.
It's not worth talking about.
The U.S. draws a bunch of guys they played in friendlies this year, basically, right?
It's so weird.
Isn't that wild? So they get Paraguay, Australia, who they played recently, just in the last couple windows, and then most likely Turkey, right? Because that is, if Turkey doesn't come out of this playoff group, they done fucked up, right? I mean, it's Slovakia, Romania, and I forget who the other one is, but anyway, Turkey doesn't come out of this group, they done fucked up. And Turkey is another team that they played earlier this year. So they could literally have 3 teams that they played in friendlies this year.
Yeah.
A lot of people are talking like this is a great draw for the U.S. I don't know how great it is. I mean, yeah, they beat a couple of these teams recently, but these are tough teams. Like they could lose to any of these teams.
Yeah, I think that it's a lot better than what could have happened. Like you would rather see Paraguay than Uruguay, right? Like that's definitely like, and so I think it's all just in context. And I think that
of the pot 2 teams, Paraguay was probably the best one for them to draw. Yes, right. I agree.
So I don't in that respect. I don't think I disagree. I think that it is a winnable group. That's really what it comes down to.
Well, and they should have the goal of winning this group, because if they win this group, they get a round of 32 against a third place team, and then round of 16 is probably Belgium.
Yeah,
that's about as good of a draw as you could possibly expect.
100%
into the quarterfinals.
100%. Right? Yep.
So, like, if you want to see this team go deep, where they're in a quarterfinal, maybe a semifinal in their home World Cup, they do have the path to get there.
Yep.
Now, it's up to the coach and the guys to figure that shit out and make it happen. But the path is at least one that is achievable. I'm not saying that they will, and I'm not saying they should. I'm just saying it is achievable. It's not like England or Argentina or somebody like that is sitting waiting for them in the round of 32 or the round of 16. Right. They are in a situation where they have a path to the quarterfinal.
Yep.
Which is kind of a wild thing to think, to be completely honest.
I mean, if you just imagine the media and the vibes if the United States were to make a quarterfinal. I mean, that alone is I think by most people's reckoning a successful World Cup, and it would, to do that on home soil would be even better. And so I think that that's why I think that most people are optimistic about the draw, and I think I'm optimistic as well. I think the last handful of friendlies has really sort of put the team in a good light, and I think that I think that my feeling at this point is that they'll at least be competitive, right? I would be surprised if they were embarrassing, and that's really what, it's a low bar, but that has always been my hope. I just don't want them to be embarrassed. I mean, God knows our president is embarrassing enough. We don't need the team to be embarrassing as well.
I'm not even going there, man. I don't even want to have that conversation.
I shouldn't have, but I did, so it's okay.
It is what it is, right? I'm with you. Like, I think that I think that we've discussed this a little bit at length throughout this fall. What Pochettino has done is built an environment where we're less concerned about the team getting embarrassed. Yep. Right, like they're going to show up to play, no matter what. And I think that is something that is something that you can be, you can feel good about and feel good about rooting for and participating in.
I think Mexico's group is a lot more difficult, and I think Mexico is playing worse, and so. If anybody needs to feel better about it, just think about that, right? Like it's okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think Denmark is probably the other hardest team in the European playoffs other than Turkey. And Denmark probably might be better than Turkey.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's a tough one, assuming they go through. Yeah, and Korea and South Africa, those are not easy outs at all. No. So, yeah, I mean, I think that it's the World Cup. None of these teams are, I mean, we couldn't get Curacao, right? Like, Curacao could not be drawn into our group. We are going to see them at Arrowhead versus Ecuador.
All right. That might be Ecuador. The one game I can afford to attend. So I'm pretty psyched about it, honestly.
Yeah, I was going to say, are you going to go go to St. Gallo and get your Curacao gear somehow? I don't know what the interest level will be in that match. I think that it will be the one that's most likely the easiest to get into. But yeah, I mean, I think it's also noteworthy that Argentina is going to be playing here.
Yeah.
Argentina-Algeria, I think, is the match that is here. Mm-hmm. And then your guy is very excited that the Netherlands is going to be playing in Kansas City.
Yeah, that's amazing. Tunisia, right?
Yeah, Tunisia.
All right. That's great.
I'm pretty excited about that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that, Kansas City could have done a lot worse.
I put in a good word for you with the Netherlands. You're welcome.
Oh, did you?
I made some calls, Drew.
Appreciate it. Yeah. You and Johnny are tight. You're like, hey, Johnny, can we get the Dutch to Kansas City, please, for my buddy Drew?
All it takes is money, and he saw my teacher bank account. And he was like, okay, we're rolling now.
He could definitely afford this. Yeah, we'll definitely work this out for him. Actually, he probably felt really sad for you. It's like, okay,
he probably did. It's just a pity.
This poor motherfucker. Let's give him one game for his friend. Yeah. So yeah, I am excited about that. But yeah, I think Kansas City did about as well as you could have expected. They could have had 2 Argentina matches, but I don't think it's realistic to expect that was gonna.
Isn't the quarterfinal match that could be played at Arrowhead? Isn't that possible?
It's potentially Argentina Portugal. Yeah.
Oh, man, that. Just the thought of that being at Arrowhead.
If they both won their groups and played through, yeah. I mean, that's slightly more important than Wizards versus Manchester United.
That would be. I can't even imagine.
It would be the most significant sporting event ever in Kansas City. I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, by a lot. Yeah.
Say whatever you want about pro football shit and whatnot. It would be the most significant sporting event ever in Kansas City.
Wow. Well, let's cross our fingers because
if you get Ronaldo versus Messi in their last World Cups,
that would be amazing. Let's go.
Yeah, I mean that's what everyone's hoping for. I think that will be the thing. But it's the World Cup, as we know. There's going to be some results that people don't expect, and it's gonna shift all of those things. But that is the potential that could happen, and I'm just happy for the folks that I know that were part of this, that part of getting this bid and working on putting it in place, and then obviously all the renovations they've had to do to Arrowhead so they could put a FIFA-sized field in there, and just all the different stuff they've done. And there's going to be a lot of activations. There's going to be all kinds of cool shit at the World War I Museum. There's going to be it's going to be a really cool deal in town. And I'm just excited for the folks that put a lot of effort into that they're being rewarded with matches that, will bring fans and will be of interest to fans.
Yeah, absolutely. It's exciting.
It is. It's really exciting. Okay. What else do we have to talk about? We spent a lot of time last week discussing kind of our thoughts about how this club could go about building itself out in the future. What would be the philosophy by which, not just the game model and the tactical style, but also we spent a lot of time talking about the game model and the tactical style last week. We didn't talk a whole lot about the ethos.
Yeah.
Right? Like what does it mean to build out a team in Kansas City in MLS to create competitiveness in the future? We talked a lot about how much we enjoyed what Vancouver had done this year. There was a great article out, I think it's on The Athletic, talking about like how much they've invested in analytics and what their and how their approach is sort of, it doesn't look like they're investing a bunch in the roster, but they've invested a ton in analytics, and that's kind of their way of trying to optimize the way that they go about doing things. You texted me something that I thought was interesting because I hadn't really considered different Premier League teams that they could sort of model themselves after about how they go. And you brought up Crystal Palace, and I think they were having a pretty good game at that point, right? Like that has something to do with why you brought it up. I don't watch a ton of Crystal Palace, so I couldn't really provide a whole lot of insight as to like what they do as being something that was interesting to me. But I'm gonna let you kind of give me kind of your thoughts of like what, as you think about what this club could be over the next 10 years and like how they look to go to this next era of the club, but also continue to maintain the level of competitive excellence, if you want to call it that. And it was that for a decade.
Yeah.
Like, and maybe recreate that competitive excellence within the bounds of the league, within the bounds of the market, within the bounds of all the things that they have to deal with. What kind of your idea is of like how they could maybe go about accomplishing that?
Well, so when I think about this type of thing, really, what I'm thinking about is I try to keep in mind like the different sort of tactical trends that we've seen, and with a I'm not trying to predict the next swing in tactics, but I am trying to kind of think of what is a style of play or a player profile or even a coaching profile that is distinctive enough that it's worthwhile, but it's malleable enough that it can or flexible enough that it can withstand different trends, right? And it's one of those things. I think that that my experience rooting for Sporting Kansas City has really sort of turned me off to some things, right? like defensive possession. I am just like, I don't want to see a team possess as a defensive tactic. At least not as a cornerstone of what they how they want to play. I think that there is a time and a place for defensive possession. I don't want my team to specialize in that, which I think in my sort of biased point of view, I think that especially in the later years, I think Sporting Kansas City definitely sort of leaned into that a little too much for my personal taste, and I think
it was a crutch. It was a crutch they used.
It was a crutch, but it also I think that what happened is it led to them painting themselves into a wall in terms of the kind of players that they could sign, right? And so instead of signing athletes,
or the type of chances they could create,
instead of signing athletes, right? Like people who had elite physical tools, they had to sign players who could possess, who had elite technical tools, and especially in MLS, right? You can't sign someone who's good at both of those things, right? Those players are playing in a top 5 league, and so that led to I think that was one of the things that led to sort of an overemphasis on maybe technical skill and maybe an underemphasis on being able to compete physically. And the fact is that soccer is a contact sport, and you have to be able to compete physically, and so for me, like that's one of the things that I sort of look to and value is a game model and a player profile who at minimum can compete physically, and I would love to see the team get a lot more athletic, a lot more physical, a lot more imposing, and be a lot more difficult to play against, just in terms of their ability to win duels and to be a physical presence everywhere on the field, but specifically like in the midfield, right in the middle of the field, I think is important. And the thing about when you mentioned that you were not that familiar with Crystal Palace, the way they play it, there are a lot of similarities in my mind between Crystal Palace and Vancouver, right? So they're both like a 3-4-2-1 type type system. They both are defensively solid and, at times physically aggressive teams. They're both difficult to play against. They both, so since they used 3 center backs, that puts the onus on wingbacks to be to provide the width. And the thing about wingbacks is they're sort of in vogue right now, and that can be limiting because you're competing with a lot of other clubs and for players of that profile. But it's a lot easier profile to fill than like a metronomic number 6 or a creative number 10, right? It's a lot easier to find people who are players who are just fast and athletic and don't mind running up and down the field. That's a lot. Those are a lot easier bullet points to check than some of the other more technical spots. And so I think that alone is a good place for a team to look. And the other thing is that it's both those teams, Vancouver and Crystal Palace, they rely on double pivots. And so, you have a more creative player in the double pivot. You have a ball winner who they're paired with. And that I think that sort of like redundancy really appeals to me, that you're not hanging it all on a single player to, cover a lot of ground and or be a progressive passer. You have 2 players who are having each other's back. And I think, like, for me, like, a double pivot system just really sort of simplifies also the approach to scouting and signing players.
But they have to be really complementary players.
Absolutely,
right?
Absolutely.
So this is a thing that makes that. Yes, it is easier than signing a single player that can do all of that. Mm-hmm. I understand that mindset. But you also have to have players that are complementary. So with Wharton and Kamada, they have guys who one of them is really good at winning duels and winning tackles. Another one's really good at sort of winning free balls in the area and then turning it upfield. And both, I would say, Kamada and Wharton are actually fairly good players in the final third. So, like, it is Wharton probably more than Kamada, right? Mm-hmm. But they have this sort of complementary skill set. So, yes, that's true that it's easier with a double pivot. But I think of the same thing with Bournemouth, right? Like, their double pivot is very complementary, right, of each other. And
it's also a pretty single pivot-y double pivot too.
Well, it's because they have Tyler Adams,
right? So it is player dependent for sure.
Right.
But I mean, like Kuvas, ball winner, Berhalter, progressive passer. I
mean, Tom put in his article that people are calling for Berhalter, and I'm like, I think you could pay. I would not have any problem giving Berhalter.
Wait, what? I did not read this article. What do you mean?
There are people trying to trade for Sebastian Berhalter.
Oh, hell yeah. I would love that. But that's not going to happen. He's going to go play in Europe, whatever. The people
are crazy. So? You think he's going to Europe?
I mean, if Aidan Morris was able to go play in the championship, absolutely Sebastian Berhalter can.
I mean, I agree with you. But I also think that I don't know how. I think it would have to be an analytics-minded club to be really excited about Berhalter, because he is an analytics kind of guy. Like, his play jumps off the page for analytics models. Yeah. Whereas you watch him, he's much more of he looks like an industrious player that hits set pieces, right? When you actually take the whole game and all the shit he does, he's really, really additive to a team. But that's what I'm saying. It's like, I would do the cash for and make him a max TAM player.
Oh hell yeah! I would be so excited if that was the case. But I'm taken aback. I'm a little speechless. I was.
You didn't know that. I'm not saying that Vancouver's going to let him go. Like, I think, and Vancouver's in a pretty positive cap position. They don't have to make these. They don't have to make these moves.
Signing a player like that brings up the other thing, and that is like. Whatever sort of shape or sort of on-field tactic that you employ, like at this point in the year, almost 2026, if you're not like dedicated to being at minimum above average on set pieces, what the fuck are you even doing? And so, like, I want to see Sporting Kansas City further develop on that as well. And that
I'm quite interested to see what a new coach does with this team, because Jake Davis is notoriously good at set pieces, and he's never been utilized that way.
Right.
Like, he's notoriously been like at the level of Johnny Russell at set pieces, maybe just under, and he's never been used in that way. Part of it's because he's playing right back a lot of the time, so they're like maybe corner kicks, but not really free kicks. I think that there are opportunities here to maximize the skill set of some of the players, but also it's just like we've got to figure out how to like build rapport and sort of positive dynamics between these two players. I have concerns with a double pivot. I have concerns because I think Manu Garcia is not a 10. And so if we're going to do a double pivot, we have to find a way for that to work and for him to be on that double pivot. And so that means either the back three has to have a legitimate sweeper in it, or the double pivot has to have an elite ball winner in it.
Yeah. And those players might be on the team, but throughout all of the struggles,
Jake Davis's tackles are not. No. He's not a good tackler at all.
That's not who I mean. Like, it might be a Zoran Basong, Manu Garcia double pivot ahead of.
You showed me the graph layovers.
I'm telling you, man, it's not something that's out of the question. It could work, especially if you had, I don't know,
a back three behind them. I'm less concerned about it. Yeah,
with Jacob Bartlett, right? Like Jacob Bartlett as an active sweeper.
I would like to see the skill level increased with those, but I understand what you're saying. Like, for players that we know that are available, and it was eye-opening to me, and maybe you should put this in the chat, in the pod chat, is like how their FB chart graphs overlap or don't overlap at all. They're almost like covering different spaces of the circle.
Yeah.
That it could function, right?
That came about from comparing like Berhalter and Kuvas, for instance, and how they complement one another in an analytic sense, and looking.
And Berhalter and Garcia look a lot like each other on those graphs as
Absolutely.
well.
And
Berhalter's way better than Garcia on set pieces, but all the other stuff, he's like. Yeah, they're very similar.
That's all it is. It's just looking for ways that you can approximate.
Berhalter way better at tackles. Way better at tackles than Manu Garcia. That's the huge difference. Is Berhalter does a lot of the Manu Garcia things. He doesn't do the progressive carries. Yeah. He's not a carrier of the ball. He's a passer of the ball. He's really good on set pieces, but he tackles way better. Than Garcia does.
The point is, and you kind of made it earlier, is that you don't have to have like for like. You just have to have two players who are complementary to one another, right? I mean, that's really what it boils down to. That's how you have a balanced spot on.
I'm just saying, if you roll into the first game of the season in February and it's Manu Garcia and Zoran Basong double pivot, some fans are going to be a little concerned.
And then they kill it, and then they're fucking awesome, and then you can say, "Holy shit, that dude was right on the podcast."
Are you trying to be Matt Doyle right now? Like, no. Is that what you're trying to do? You're trying to make a Matt Doyle take that you can dunk on people about later?
No, because if I was Matt Doyle, I would, as you pointed out, I would just save all my good takes and I would ignore all the bad ones. So, like, it's a self-promotion is a skill, man, and I am not at that level. I promise.
I think it's an interesting thought experiment. I think there are ways to find much more useful versions of Zoran Basong.
Yeah. And I'm also thinking, like, what if shit goes sideways and we can't sign all the players that we need to sign, right? How are we going to play if we can't bring in all the new talent in this window? If we can't really, do what we need to do, and are the players that are here, can they do a job? And if so, what job could that possibly be? And so that's sort of how I arrived at that. I think one of the major pluses to possibly going with that sort of approach with the 3-4-2-1 or something like that is, that sort of box midfield where you have, 2 number 10 type players and then 2 central midfielders. And, if Manu can't play, as part of a double pivot, he could definitely play as one of those 10s, right? And so, and in my opinion,
I think he could. I don't think it's the best use of him.
No, you're probably right. Daniel Shallowy could, but it's probably not the best use.
100%
too.
No,
so,
I don't have any problem with Shallowy as an inverted winger, a half spacing guy.
There you go.
No problem with that whatsoever.
What is your problem? What is your problem with Manu at that position?
I think that he's not. I think his elite skill is finding space in the central third of the field, and I just don't think he's going to have many. He's going to have to drop too deep, and it's going to create situations where they're not getting the right type of overloads in the attacking part of the field. He's going to have his skill set is between the zone 14s.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That area of the field is his. That's where he thrives. I'm not saying he can't hit the final ball, and he can, and it's often a chipped ball or whatever. But what he really thrives in is getting on the ball, creating space, and then using that space to create space for his teammates. He's not a stand on the ball at the top of the box and deliver the final pass guy.
Right.
And he's certainly not if you use him in a triumvirate that's sort of rotating around and trying to attack the goal, I'm not sure that's his thing either. I think he's really great as the fourth runner. Yeah. I think that is something that he's good at. I don't know that being what they do with a 3-4-2-1 and say in Columbus, right? When they had Rossi, Cucho, and who was the third?
I know who you're gonna say, and his name is escaping me too.
Was it Mo Farsi? They had a few different guys that would do it, but anyway, when you would have that sort of triangle of players,
it was Rodriguez, wasn't it?
Oh yeah. No,
he was playing up top.
No, it was Cucho, Rossi, and Christian
Ramirez.
Christian Ramirez,
not Rodriguez.
Christian Ramirez, and they would do that. I mean, they basically had 2 center forwards and a 10 that was sort of a shadow striker that was doing that. That is what you need from that environment. Shallowy is perfect for that sort of rotational responsibility. They need another guy that can do that with Shallowy and Joveljic. I don't think Manu Garcia is that guy.
Well, and that was another reason why I was trying to think of ways that he would work in a double pivot is to accommodate.
He can be in the double pivot. They just have to have the right partner for him.
Right.
I'm telling you right now.
That would allow for another creative player up top, which would be really fantastic if you could have somebody who was.
If it was Christian Espinosa, we'd be fucking flying, dude.
Yeah.
But I think that, as I said this to Joe Lowry when I showed him the sort of Rodrigo de Paul, Manu Garcia comparison that you sent me, I was like, they have desperate needs at right wing and defensive midfield, desperate. They have to solve those 2 positions. Those are probably the most important positions to solve.
Yep.
For them to have a base level of competitiveness next year.
Yep.
And if they're not doing it with DPs, they've got to find it somewhere, right?
I mean, I think that both of those positions are positions you can fill at a non-DP level, but still be competitive.
But the best teams that use those types of setups generally have DPs at one of those 2 positions.
This is true.
So we're talking about Sporting having it at none of those positions.
This is true.
And so this sort of gets into the conversation about, is it right for you to be investing in an elite player between the 18-yard boxes as a DP?
Well, you've already done it. That ship has sailed, so you have to work around it, and
you have to work around it and maximize it. And I do also believe that Manu Garcia is going to look like a much better player with better players around him.
Yeah, amen.
And
And frankly,
is not that.
if you have a more experienced and better coach, that will probably help as well.
For sure. For sure. Or one that's the one that is pushing them to be much more aggressive in how they play, both defensively and offensively, right? Offensively, defensively, this team was just way too slow.
Yeah, way too slow.
And not I'm not talking about athletically.
Yeah.
I'm talking about how they reacted to situations.
Yep.
And if you watch this Miami Vancouver game, you could see it being played at a speed that Sporting was just not equipped to play at.
Yep.
That is the biggest issue they have to solve. And I do not believe that Manu Garcia and Dejan Joveljic have issues playing at that speed.
Not at
all. In
all.
fact, I know that they do not have issues playing at that speed. I do know that they need to coach a lot of these guys up, as well as bring other players in that are ready to accept that coaching and play at that level. And
yep.
I mean, the Palace thing is interesting to me. I think that you're what we're seeing in the Premier League, and I think it's a really interesting thing that's happening in the Premier League, is that there are a lot of teams that are sort of figuring out that with the amount of TV money they get and the amount of money that they have as a club, that they can field a team that can compete. Maybe not win the Premier League, but certainly be of the level where they could beat any Premier League team at any given day. And I don't think that was the case maybe even 5 years ago.
No, not it's completely upended the league, and it's made it a much different watching experience. And there are at this point there's really no sure things, right? Like, I mean, you have teams,
I mean,
like
Villa beating Arsenal last weekend was a prime example of this.
Hell
right?
yeah.
Like Villa has been on this sort of upward trajectory for about 3 years. And say what you want about Unai Emery and all that stuff, but they have been on this trajectory for a while. And maybe they didn't. It wasn't like they lucked into this win against Arsenal. They played very well in that game. And I think that we're seeing more and more of this. Nottingham Forest last year was more just sort of like the absorb and counter and sort of play against the ball and just finish above XG and whatnot. And that's sort of what Sunderland's doing right now. But I think that that's what I'm saying is, like, there are a number of teams sort of subverting what you believe is possible in the Premier League now, because all of them have so much fucking money. Like, all of them have way more money than 80% of the teams in the Champions League.
Yeah. Well, and I think that one of the things that has happened is, you look at a team like Sunderland, is, when they come up, they know that they need good football players, but really they also know that at the minimum they need to be able to compete physically, and that's a really the Premier League is a really demanding league in terms of the physicality and the speed of play, and so, like, I think that I think that MLS is drifting in a similar direction. I think that that's a big reason why the possession styles and of Vermes kind of stopped working, is because teams were able to counteract that. I think that a lot of teams got a lot better at pressing and playing against the press. I think the overall sort of athletic level and physicality level in the league has increased in the last 5 years, and I think that Sporting Kansas City kind of got left behind. And most of the times, this past season, the past 2 seasons, not only have they have had worse athletes on the field, and they've had, I think, for the most part, worse players, technically on the field as well. And it's time to sort of bump the level of all of that up. They need to invest in athletes and in skilled soccer players as well.
Well, and they have a CSO that understands what the level of this league is right now, and understands the type of players they need, understands the type of coach they need to be able to bring them to that level. But I want to go back to the Premier League thing for just a second, because we're making this comparison. You're like, okay, well, what does that have to do with MLS? My point is that I feel like the Premier League, from like 1 to 16, is much more balanced than it's ever been.
Yep. And
I think the point that I'm making is similarly to MLS. There are the haves and the have-nots in MLS for sure, but there are, I think, the the calculus for building a good team in MLS is not totally dissimilar to the Premier League now, where there are teams that have enough resources to compete, and if they do it effectively, they can be competitive. And yeah, there will always the most popular teams will always be the teams in Manchester and Arsenal and Tottenham and Liverpool and whatnot, right? Like those will always be the most popular teams in the league. But there are teams with enough resources now that they can effectively compete if they do it in a very defined and sort of they sort of hold true to their values sort of way, right? They sort of draw a stake in the ground, like this is what we're going to do, and we're going to hold fast to that. And you saw that, and I think that's the point you're making with Crystal Palace. I think we're seeing it with Bournemouth. I think we're seeing it with Aston Villa. I think we're seeing it even with Sunderland, getting themselves up and then continuing to sort of manage in the same way that they have. We're seeing teams show the ability with a smart and sort of defined idea be effective, but it can't be, to your point, 2018 Barcelona, right? Like there's too much, and the Premier League is an extremely physical league too, which I think is also the reason that we're sort of having this comparison, that MLS can be an extremely physical league, and it can be very sort of crash car-y, and it can look that way at times. And you have to be ready for that, and you have to be able to maximize those events when they happen. Yeah. And I look at Vancouver as a team that is really good at that. Yep. I look at there's several others that are San Diego is really good at baiting you into those events and then passing through them, right? Mm-hmm. Like there's just different philosophies for it, but I think that we're seeing these very well thought out philosophies. And it's been a minute since Sporting has looked like that team.
Yeah.
And I think we're both waiting for that to happen because we were so used to Vermes being on the sort of the cutting edge of that.
Yeah.
And we sort of lost that over the last several years. And I think they are doing the right things to bring the right people in to get back to that place.
Well, they definitely have their work cut out for them. They have a lot of work to do, and time is drawing short. So
it is drawing short. And I think we're going to see a lot of movement over the next week or so.
I agree.
Both as far as hiring a coaching staff, as far as signing players, drafting players. There's so many other things that are going to happen.
Yeah.
Like I said, we're recording this on a Wednesday night, so who knows what's going to happen on Thursday. Like, we are in that time of year where the news is happening so fast and furious that we're going to have completely different perspectives on kind of where this team is and what they're trying to accomplish. And it will be very interesting. It's the most interesting offseason this team has had in a long time.
Amen.
And I think we're both very interested to see how it develops. And we will be back next week to talk to you about what new things have occurred. And until then, I'm Drew. He's Cody. We will talk to you all next week.
Bye-bye.